Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. Now the weather this weekend in Sussex is absolutely atrocious, so I haven't been able to get out to metal detect. However, a couple of days ago I put a post out on my Facebook, Instagram and YouTube community tab asking you to ask me some questions. I said anything you like, metal detecting, YouTube channel, me, any topic you like, and I've had loads and loads of responses. So I'm Adam, you've asked the questions, and hopefully following this video you'll have the answers. Welcome to D-Tekt Sussex. Okay, so thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions. I was inundated with questions. I didn't expect so many. I'm not going to get through every single one, so please don't be disheartened if I don't get to yours. If you enjoy this video and this is useful, drop me a comment down below, and if enough people say it's useful, then the next time I can't go out and metal detect for a weekend, maybe I'll do another one and I'll save those questions for a later time. So the questions I had related to metal detecting, specifically the metal detectors, including settings. So I'll cover that a little bit later in the video. Quite a few of you wanted to know a little bit more about me. So we'll kick off with that. If you're brand new to the channel, it might be a nice little introduction to the person who is behind the channel for you. So my name is Adam. I go out metal detecting every weekend with one of my metal detectors. I'm 40 years old. I live in Sussex here in the UK. I have a day job working in an office for an online retailer. And I have lots of hobbies in addition to metal detecting. So metal detecting and video editing and video production are two of my hobbies. And it's really nice to be able to combine those and make a YouTube channel for people to enjoy, especially one that's done so well. And the channel has done well over the last few years. I'm really grateful to everyone who keeps watching my adventures every single week. In addition to that, I'm also a musician. I'm a trumpet player. I've been playing since, well, about 1994, so we're getting on for about, oh goodness, what's that? Getting on for about 30 years, which is quite a long time. I've played in brass bands, in orchestras, I've played around the world, I've done all sorts of stuff with that, so that's very exciting. What else? I'm also a CrossFitter. I go to a local gym called Full Range Fitness, and yeah, I enjoy that. Keeps me fit, keeps me healthy, keeps me up and active. Nice early morning starts. Let's see what. Oh, I also do cosplay. Now I'm not serious into cosplay. Some people take this really seriously. I basically dress up as a Ghostbuster. Some of you may have seen some of that in last week's episode, the Halloween special. And I'm a founding member of a team called the Sussex Ghostbusters. We go around Sussex dressed in all the gear, movie accurate gear, proton packs, ghost traps, the works, and we raise money for charity. That's our main focus. So we do that. We have several big events through the year that we do that. There's about 20 of us across the county in part of the team, and it's something that's grown over the last sort of 6 or so years since we started. I'm really proud of that. And occasionally, just for my own fun, I also dress up as Captain America. So that's a little bit more about me. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight, and hopefully that answers the questions you had on the topic of Adam. Let's move on to the next question and see what we can answer for you next. Okay, so following on from that last question, a few of you wanted to know how I got into metal detecting. So my dad's a keen metal detectorist, and when I was about 7 or 8 years old, my parents got me my first metal detector. Fairly basic thing, a few dials and knobs, a little analog needle on the top. But my dad took me out a few times with that, went down the beach, went up the woods, taught me a few things that I remembered right up until when I started again as an adult, things like keeping the coil parallel to the ground, how to swing the machine, all that kind of stuff, as well as learning a few bits about the environments we were detecting in. So I really loved that. Then life took over a bit. I started playing music. I started, I went through college, all that kind of stuff, and things got in the way, and I just didn't really do it very much at all. Then probably something like 30-ish years later, Actually, when we were starting up the Sussex Ghostbusters, shortly after we started it, a gentleman got in touch saying he also did the Ghostbusters dress up thing. You may know him. His name is Aaron Weedle. He runs South Coast Detecting YouTube channel. Make sure you check that out and subscribe if you haven't already. He started his channel, I think, back in 2016, which is roughly when I met him. And a few months later, I realised he was doing this channel. I started watching it. It brought back a few of the memories of when I was younger, going out with my dad with the metal detector. And it took a few years, but eventually I got the bug enough to get myself a new metal detector and start going out myself. So I got that metal detector, would you believe, in summer 2019. And it took a couple of months, a little bit of persuasion from Aaron. And obviously I'd been wanting to do something video based for a while because video editing is a hobby of mine. I wanted to do a YouTube channel on something for a while, and this all just sort of came together into one, and it was just a good opportunity for me to do videos and metal detect every weekend. And that's how D-Tekt Sussex started. The channel's been going since September 2019, so just over 3 years, and we are, at the time of recording, exactly 50 subscribers away from 5,000 subscribers. So again, opportunity now for me to thank you all so much for those of you who are subscribed. And if you're not subscribed, maybe you can be part of the next 50 that helps get the channel up to 5,000. So thanks for everyone who asked about that question. Let's move on to something a bit more metal detecting related, shall we? Okay, so one person asked me, if money was no object, what machine would I like to have? Do you know what? I think it's going to be the Anfibio. I don't know if you're aware of it. It's a machine that Nokta do. It's their high-end machine. It's actually, it looks like a metal detector, but you have a separate laptop computer. You can use it as one person. Quite often you'll have someone else with the laptop. But basically you sweep the ground and it gives you a three-dimensional representation of what is underneath the ground. It's an incredible bit of tech. I've never seen one up close, and I'd love to get my hands on it and have a little play. So yeah, money no object. I'd love to have a play with the Nokta Anfibio. What's my favourite place to detect? Now, if you're used to the channel, you'll know that I metal detect in beaches, parks, and in fields, all sorts of places all over the place. And do you know what? I don't really have a favourite place. Each place I go has a different challenge. If you're on the beach, you know, there's certain things you have to contest with, like the mineralization in the sand, for example. There's also sort of dangers. You know, you can slip over on rocks, you can get caught by the tide, all that kind of stuff. So that is a very different proposition to going out on a peaceful bit of pasture and metal detecting on there for a few hours. That has its own challenges as well in terms of finding things at depth, getting the right settings so you can find exactly what it is you're looking for. It's such a different thing to detect in those different areas. I'm going to chicken out a little bit on this question and just say, do you know what? I actually enjoy detecting everywhere, beach, park or field. I absolutely love it and I can't get enough of it, and that's why I chop and change and switch it up a bit on the channel as often as I possibly can. Cleaning and maintenance. A couple of people asked me about cleaning and maintenance of the machines. I'll be honest with you, I don't clean my machine after every single use. Probably every sort of 3 or 4 times out with the machine, I'll give it a clean. The main thing to look out for, especially on the machines with the carbon shaft, is to make sure you have the carbon shaft out, especially if you're down the beach. Take the carbon shaft out every few hunts and give it a good clean, give it a good wash, dry it out, and put something on it like grease or WD-40, some sort of lubricant before it goes back in. Because what you find is, because the carbon fibre is a little bit more porous than the standard plastic, it can get bits of sand and water and clay and things in there, and you'll find that the carbon shaft can get a little bit stiff and stuck. So make sure you're paying attention to that. Otherwise, I mean, the Nokta machines that I use are pretty much bomb-proof. You know, you're not going to get much, you're not going to get anything inside the control box, you're not going to get much inside the coil, but maybe every couple of months I'll take the coil cover off and give it a good old clean and dust out. Not usually too much in there, but you know, it's always worth doing, just in case you get something stuck in there that's going to affect the signal. And it just keeps the machine looking and working in tip-top condition. Another little tip I'll give you, if you can get yourself some GT85 spray, it's a bit like WD-40, but it's got Teflon inside. You might have something by a different name if you're somewhere else in the world. If you can get some of that, a little bit on a cloth, spray it on all the nice black bits of your detector, and it'll actually make it look a little bit better, make it shine, and give it a bit of a protective coating as well. So hopefully it won't get damaged or you know, dirty quite so much when you're out metal detecting. Just keeps the machines looking great for the camera. Okay, so a few of you have asked about the Nomads. Now, I've been a Nokta Nomad since April 2021, so just over a year and a half. It's an honour to be a Nomad. I'm really proud of my position there. If you're not sure what it is, essentially the Nomads are a team of people around the world. Generally there's one per country. There's actually 3 in the UK and a few in the US, just because they're more metal detecting focused countries than others. And essentially we are people who use the Nokta gear, know the Nokta gear, have decent knowledge of the Nokta gear, and we can be a sort of pseudo representative of the company online when people need help or advice on the Nokta gear. We're not employed by Nokta. We haven't signed a contract with Nokta. There's no payment involved beyond obviously being sent equipment from time to time. So essentially I can still come on here and be honest and tell you my honest opinion of things. In fact, when the Legend came out originally, there were a few things with it that I was struggling to get around, and they fixed those with later updates. So I'm not going to come on here and be dishonest about the gear just because I have an association with the company. I still want to be honest. The day that Nokta asked me to be dishonest about something is the day I will stop being a Nomad. You have my word on that. But yeah, it is an honour. I get to represent Nokta at events like Detectable. And yes, I do get some of the new gear as a bit of a perk. So when the Legend came out, I had that a few weeks before the general public, so I could get used to it and have a look at it and learn bits about it ahead of time, so that when people started getting theirs, I can then give them a little bit of help because I had a little bit of experience with it. In that vein, we're going to move on to a few questions specifically about the machines that I use. So let's get to that. Okay, so I have 3 metal detectors. I use the Nokta Anfibio, the Nokta Simplex, and the Nokta Legend. Now, the Anfibio I got when I became a Nomad. It is a very, very powerful and very highly adjustable machine. Now, when I got that machine, my experience on metal detectors was a very basic detector when I first started, and the Nokta Simplex, which is a brilliant machine. But it's nowhere near as complicated as the Anfibio. I don't think I was ready for the Anfibio when I first got it. Okay, that's just me being honest. With the Simplex, it is a brilliant machine. A lot of you watch my channel have the Simplex, and you say you pick up little tips and tricks from me, which is always lovely to hear. I've got a tips and tricks video on the Simplex. If you want to go and check that out, I'll put a link in the description for you. The Simplex is designed for both beginners and experts. The whole idea behind the Simplex is that if you are a complete beginner to metal detecting, you can pick up the Simplex and learn it really, really quickly, pick it up and go. If you're expert, if you're a little bit more experienced, there are settings on there you can use. You can tweak things, you can use maybe less than intuitive modes. You can use certain settings to just enhance your experience and counteract things. And we'll go on to the Legend in a second, but let's talk about the Simplex just very quickly, because it is the machine I know probably the most about of all the machines I have. And a lot of you are asking about settings. So if you are a complete beginner, okay, pick the mode that relates to where you are. If you're in the beach, go for beach mode. If you're in a park or a trashy area, go for park mode. If you're in a field, go for field mode. Okay, just do that, pick it up, do that, do a little ground balance. Okay, just hold down the ground balance button, do a little pump. Just read the manual on the technique on that, but just do a very quick auto ground balance and you're basically good to go. Okay, if you're getting lots of chatter, just drop the sensitivity a little bit. If you're a bit more experienced, then there are some things you can do in addition to that. Again, a lot of this is covered in my tips and tricks video, but just for brief, if you're at a park, just go park mode. I'd probably go park mode 1. Park mode 1, park mode 2. Park mode 1, you'll get a bit more depth, but you'll need to swing a little bit slower. Okay, it's got a lower recovery speed on that mode, just by default. Park mode 2 is good if you've got a ridiculously trashy area, like so many bits of bottle tops and ring pulls and just trash everywhere. Go for park mode 2. You won't get the depth, but you'll get the separation. Okay, and you can swing a little bit faster, and you'll pick up all the targets under the ground that way. If you're in a field, okay, and it's not a public facing area, still go for field mode. Field mode is the deepest of the bespoke modes, so the field, park and beach modes. It's the deepest of all of them. You will need to swing slower in field mode than in the other modes, okay, but you will penetrate the ground a lot deeper. It's not the best for trashy areas. Park modes have got certain filters and things in there for the trashy areas, but field mode is brilliant if you're in an area that's not generally open to the public. Sensitivity wise, you can usually keep the sensitivity in park and In fact, in all the modes, you can usually keep it fairly high. Just drop it if you are getting some chatter. Always do a ground balance in whatever mode you're in. Auto ground balance in all cases except for wet sand on the beach, which I'll come to in a second. The other thing you can do in park and field modes is set the iron volume. It's not an iron filter like you got on the Legend, but it just reduces the volume of the iron tone, the low tone on the machine, and that can help to unmask things. So if you've got a nice target next to a big hunk of iron, it can in most cases help you to hear that nice tone by just getting rid or just reducing the volume of the iron tone. So that's another little tip for the slightly more advanced users if you're in a field or park modes. Now the beach is a bit of a contentious one. Okay, a lot of people say the Simplex is not a beach machine. That is not true. Okay, the Simplex is really, really good on the beach if you set it up correctly. If you're a complete beginner, just go beach mode, go. You'll get a few bits of chatter here and there. You'll get a few targets you probably won't be able to find. But generally, it'll be quite good for you. You'll get a good bit of experience, and when you're more experienced, then you can tweak things a little bit more. Now, for the more experienced users on the beach, these are the settings I use. If I'm on the dry stuff, I use Park 2 because you don't need the depth. You just need the separation from all the trash, and that's where all the trash is likely to be in the dry areas. To Park Mode 2, full sensitivity, 1 bar off if you absolutely have to, and just do an auto ground balance, okay? If you're down on the wet sand, and this is where people find problems and chatter and issues. If you're down on the wet sand, on the Simplex, knock it into all metal mode, okay? You can use a park mode if you prefer. All metal mode isn't for everybody. Some people don't like the threshold tone, but go into all metal mode if you can, because you'll pick up everything. There's no filters in it. It's literally, the machine is raw in all metal mode. Go into all metal mode, and this is the vitally most important thing that people miss. You have to manually change the ground balance all the way down to 0. Okay, by manually changing the ground balance all the way down to 0, you will eliminate the mineralization in the sand. Okay, if you do that, do those two things, that machine will serve you so well on the beach. Will you still get the odd little chirp here and there? Maybe, it's possible. If you do, just drop the sensitivity down by a bar, but you will seriously have some fantastic results if you go all metal mode and ground balance down to 0 on the wet sand. Okay, so yeah, give that a try next time you're down there if you're struggling on the beach with the Simplex. Okay, so now we'll have a quick chat about the Legend. Now, the Legend came out earlier this year. Again, I had it a few weeks ahead of time just so I can get used to it before it came out to the general public. It is a simultaneous multi-frequency machine. So compared to the Simplex, which is a single frequency machine, or the Anfibio, which is a single frequency machine, but you can change it. There's 3 options for frequencies, but it will only run 1 frequency at a time. The Legend will run several frequencies at a time, okay? Now, the actual recipe for that, the actual frequencies it uses, how many and what frequencies it uses in each mode is secret, okay? No company gives that kind of information out. I don't know what those frequencies are. But it's because it uses several frequencies at the same time, it's got more chance of finding a target, okay? Because there's more chance of the target's ideal frequency being close to one of the frequencies you're using. And because of the type of technology it is, it will reach deeper than a single frequency machine. So you'll find more stuff, and the stuff you find will generally be deeper. Okay, I love the Legend. It is now my main detector. I still have the Simplex out from time to time. I had it out a couple of weeks ago, and I still will get that machine out because I love the Simplex. But the Legend is such a good machine. And it's proving itself. You know, I go online every day as part of my Nomads job, and I see people having so much success with the Legend. If you're on the Simplex and you're thinking about going to the Legend, a few people asked me about this. You know, what sort of a learning curve is it? Is it worth doing? Is it worth doing? Yes, if you can afford it. Obviously, there is a bit of a price jump, although at time of recording, there is a bit of a price drop on the Legend. So if you're going to buy it, now might be a good time. But yeah, it's basically physically, it's almost identical. Okay, it's a tiny bit heavier, but almost imperceptibly. It's the same kind of housing. It's still 100% waterproof. It's still tough as nails. And it is really similar to the Simplex. The layout of the screen is very similar. The modes are in the same place. The PDIs are in the same place. Sensitivity settings, depth, gauge, options, all of that in the same kind of place. So in terms of looking at the screen, it will look fairly familiar. It will look like the Simplex. There's more icons, there's more options, there's more settings, okay? Using the Legend this year, I feel like I now understand the Anfibio more, because by learning the Legend, which is more basic in terms of settings than the Anfibio, but more advanced than the Simplex, I feel like I could probably get the Anfibio out again and set that up a bit more intelligently and have a better hunt with that now, having played with the Legend. But yeah, on the Legend, the main settings you want to look at are modes, just like the Simplex, sensitivity, just like the Simplex, although there are 30 stages of sensitivity on the Legend rather than just 7 on the Simplex, and things like the recovery speed and the noise cancelling. Those are the main settings. I've done an overview video on the Legend with so many more bits of information on it, so go and check that out. Again, I'll drop a link in the description to that for you. But just for basic settings, if you're in the park, go for park mode. Set the recovery speed high, okay? I mean, I'd probably put it somewhere around about 7. The reason for that is you'll lose a tiny bit of depth, but you'll get more separation and it'll help you just get in and around the trash in the area a little bit more easily. For fields and pasture, places the public don't go, use field mode. It's deeper than park mode. You'll need to swing a little bit slower. I would probably suggest using quite a low recovery speed on that. You'll get more depth, but again, you will need to swing the coil slower. So just make sure you're aware of that. You also, on those modes, have an iron filter. I'd have the iron filter set probably around about midway to start with. And yeah, move on from there. I'll talk about beach in a second, but just on the subject of settings for the Simplex, for the Legend, for any machine, if you ask someone for their settings, and again, the settings I'm giving you today are just the settings I would use, just be aware that those settings work for that person with that machine in that location, okay? You can go to a location 3 times in a row and use different settings. What you need to do is, over time, learn the machine, learn what the settings do, learn what you gain by changing a setting, learn what you lose by changing a setting, like the recovery speed. You know, you up the recovery speed, you gain swing speed and separation, but you lose a little bit of depth, okay? It's just knowing things like that. And then when you arrive at a location to detect, you can then use the basic settings. If someone's giving you settings, by all means, set your machine up for those. But you may just need to tweak things a little bit if you're finding that the experience isn't quite what you want, okay? Someone can give you the perfect settings for their location, but it might be chatty as hell at your particular location, and you may just need to adjust things a little bit on the spot. So just be aware there's no settings set that will work everywhere. If there was, there'd be a button for it, and you could just switch into it and go, okay? That's the reason we have different settings. So that's park and beach, and a little note on settings. Sorry, park and field, a little note on settings. So on beach, there's 2 multi-modes. There's multi-wet and multi-dry. Just use them as relevant. So if you're on the dry, use multi-dry. If you're on the wet, use multi-wet. In terms of recovery speed, I tend to have the recovery speed up fairly high. Probably higher on the dry. I'm only up about sort of 7 or 8 on the dry, and I'm probably about 5 or 6 on the wet. You don't need the depth on the beach. Most beaches have a rock base, or what have you, a foot or 2 down, so you don't need the depth on the beach. If you're on the wet, it's going to start filling in with sand and things anyway if you get too deep, so you don't want to go too deep on there. So just benefit from the extra recovery speed on the beach. For all modes, I tend to have my sensitivity set at 25. That gives me a little bit of extra movement, wiggle room upwards. If I have a faint signal, I can bump it up. But 25 seems to be stable pretty much everywhere. What else we got? Oh, on the beach, iron filter, I have about midway again. I have about 4. And I set the stability, the iron filter stability, to about midway as well on 4. But again, adjust it. You know, if you're in a particular location, you've got lots of iron, you might need to whack that up a little bit. If there's no iron anywhere, you might have to knock it down a little bit. Okay, so again, these are my settings. By all means, use them, but you may have to tweak them for your particular location. Yeah, the only other thing to say is noise cancel. You need to do a noise cancel. Ground balance isn't quite so important on the Legend as it is on the Simplex. You don't necessarily need to ground balance. You can if you want, it won't hurt, but you don't necessarily need to. It's the noise cancellation bit that you need to do. It's the first option on the menu. Do an auto noise cancellation probably once every half an hour, and it'll make sure that you are chatter free on that machine. Just because it's multi-frequency, it can be a bit more susceptible to interference. And just make sure your phone's on airplane mode and things like that. But yeah, hopefully that answers. I had a lot of questions about settings on the Legend and Simplex and about switching between the two. Hopefully that answers some of them. Check out those tips and tricks and overview videos I mentioned. Again, links in the description below. And yeah, hopefully that's answered the questions on those machines. Let's move on to the next question. Okay, so we're back to a couple of slightly more personal questions that people have asked me. So I mentioned earlier I do a little bit of cosplay, and someone asked me what my ultimate cosplay would be. Now, I always hesitate to call myself a cosplayer. I always think of people who are cosplayers who have about 20 costumes in their cupboard and they're making them all the time. They're doing different characters and different things here and there, and they're reusing stuff to make new costumes. That's not what I do. I'm really just a Ghostbuster. Primarily, I do a little bit of Captain America here and there, but I'm basically just a Ghostbuster. And if I build something new, generally it's an accessory for the Ghostbusters. So I've got ghost traps, I've got PKE meter, I've got some of the more obscure props from the films. Now, I like all the Ghostbusters films. Ghostbusters 2 has a bit of a special resonance for me. And again, someone asked me what my ultimate cosplay would be. I'm actually building a slime blower from the second film. So if you remember the film, at the end of it, they strap on these slime blowers and they use it to apply this special slime that they found during the course of the film to the Statue of Liberty, which then makes it walk down the street. It sounds mad. If you haven't seen it, make sure you watch it. It'll make more sense. But basically, it looks like this, and I'm currently in the process of getting the parts for it, and I'll be building that soon. And I've wanted to build one of these for years and years and years. So if you want to know what my ultimate cosplay project would be, I'm actually doing it now. It's the slime blower from Ghostbusters 2. Okay, so one person asked me, obviously in a slightly more geeky vein, because I'm a little bit of a geek, what my ideal superpower would be. And I've thought about this, and you know what? I can't really think of one other than speed, because it takes me about 3 hours to edit an episode of D-Tekt Sussex. So I'm out for 4 or 5 hours recording, hunting and recording the videos. And I come back and I then spend about 3 hours editing the videos, which is a long time, you know, because I use professional editing software to do it. So it takes me a bit longer. It takes me about 3 hours, and if I could get that down to an hour or so, that would be marvelous. So I think super speed, especially super speed editing, would be a fantastic superpower for me to have. So a lot of you have asked me what my favourite find is, and I really struggled with this one. I love finding stuff. I love finding coins. Okay, if I go out and I find a coin, I'm happy. It doesn't matter what it is. There's something about coins that just resonates with me, and I just love finding coins, old, new, foreign, doesn't matter. I really like finding the 50 caliber bullet tips. I found 3 so far. I'm really, really fond of those. And I also like finding the jewellery on the beach, you know, the silver rings, gold rings, that kind of thing. So it's really hard for me to pick a favourite find. I'd have to sort of pick different ones for different locations, because if you're on the beach, you're not likely to find a Roman coin. You know, if you're out in the middle of a field, you're not likely to find a gold ring, you know, a modern day gold ring. So on the beach, I guess my favourite finds are the rings. You know, to find a gold or silver ring on the beach is absolutely fantastic. I love doing that. So if it's on the beach, favourite find would be rings. I found a few recently. I'll stick a picture up here of one I found just a few weeks ago. So yeah, gold and silver rings on the beach. In terms of parks, again, coins. If I can find pre-decimal coins in the parks, that would be ideal. I haven't found many pre-decimal coins in the parks. It's usually just modern coinage, to be fair. Field-wise, I found my first Roman coin last year. It wasn't great. It was a bit grotty. It's grotty old minim, but you know, to think that coin has been in the ground for 2,000 years, you know, and even just to say that isn't quite sort of grasping the magnitude of that. If you think back to things in history, like when Henry VIII was on the throne, that coin was in that little bit of mud. Yeah. When Mozart was composing, that coin was in that bit of mud. When man was setting foot on the moon, that coin was in that bit of mud. You know, when I was born, when, you know, every single thing I've done in my life, every breath I've taken, that coin has been in that little bit of mud, only for me to walk over it last year with my metal detector and find it. I think that's fantastic. I think that's just mind-blowing that it's been there all that time. So in terms of out in the field, I think that's probably going to be my favourite so far, even though it's just a grotty Roman. Hopefully I can find some more grotty Romans. But I found lots of other stuff. I found a cartwheel penny earlier this summer at the LP metal detecting dig. I found lots of old pre-decimal coins, and again, I love finding the 50 cal bullets. So I can't give you a one favourite find, as much as I'd love to. I can't answer that question really specifically, but hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight. I like finding lots of stuff. All right, so that's all the questions I have to answer today. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions for me to answer. If you liked this, if you enjoyed it, if you found it useful, please drop me a comment down below and hit the like button. If people find this useful, then it's something I can turn to if there's a weekend in the future that I can't get out for a hunt. I can do another Q&A session and ask you for more questions. So if this was useful and you enjoyed it, please let me know down below. If it wasn't useful, if it was awful, if you absolutely hated it, again, drop me a comment, let me know. I'd rather get the feedback and know for future, so then I can make a decision in the future whether I do another one of these or not. But thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions. If I didn't get to yours, I've got them written down, so I'll try and do it in the future if we do another one of these. And as I said earlier, we are about 50 subscribers away from 5,000 subscribers in just over 3 years. It's a phenomenal thing for this channel to have grown that quickly. I'm so grateful to everyone who follows my adventures on a weekly basis. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do. Please hit the subscribe button down below and you'll help us get to that 5,000 milestone. And also, if you do enjoy the content I produce, I'd really be grateful if you hit the share button and maybe share the videos on your social media. That way, more people can find the channel and more people can get information like they've had in this video. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for all your support. Have a fantastic week, everybody, and I'll see you soon. Take care.